Welcome back. I'm E-Rock and let's talk Halloween. The last few years as I've been harvesting clips for the Late Night Saga, trying to put together stories about conflicts or friendships in the array of late night talk shows on network television, you can't help but notice patterns that show up across all the talk shows, like the same guest appears on multiple shows throughout many years. Or in this case, I happen to notice that a lot of horror characters have shown up across multiple talk shows across multiple years, such as horror novelists, horror movie makers, horror movie stars, sometimes even horror movie characters. So since I had just finished doing something timely with Climate Night, I thought I would try to do something else timely with Halloween. So there's not a great deal to say about this particular edit, Halloween Tonight, that I put together, beyond the fact that it was fun to find pieces that I thought would fit, like different hosts doing skits based on Halloween, trick-or-treating, or jack-o'-lanterns, various interviews with people in the horror genre, and I did stray a little far afield by putting in clips from horror movies. Although talk shows are famous for showing clips, so I guess it still fits the talk show theme. But I suppose two things really became apparent doing this edit. And I don't know if it's because of the nature of talk shows in general, or if it's because of the nature of clips that are uploaded to YouTube that I have access to. The first thing I noticed was that going back to old clips from the 70s and 80s, it was a lot easier to find talk show clips of novelists, for example, whereas the talk shows of today might be more preoccupied with movie stars or TV stars or streaming stars. I'm not sure that's a fair critique, because it's possible that current talk shows also book novelists just as much as the old ones did, but they simply aren't the ones that people are choosing to upload. One of the other things that's different in that regard is that if I'm talking about clips from Tom Snyder's show or Dick Cavett or even David Letterman, a lot of times, the people uploading the clips to YouTube are just fans. Whereas when it comes to Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or any of the modern hosts, most of their YouTube channels are controlled by the actual TV show itself, so they're going to choose which clips to include on their channel and which ones to leave out. They might interview 3 or 4 guests in one night, but they might only include 1 or 2 of them in clips on their YouTube channel because the other ones didn't test well or whatever. This edit that I put together, Halloween Tonight, is a bit of a patchwork. You can see all different eras represented, which was nice. You'll see I lean much more heavily towards the older stuff. That's just because that's what I've been going through, looking at some of the history of late night, which is an education that I've been giving myself. I didn't know much about the Tom Snyder show or the old Johnny Carson show, and certainly not about Dick Cavett, until I started doing the Late Night Saga. And I have very few clips of Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, any of the modern hosts, Stephen Colbert. On the other hand, when I did search YouTube for talk show Halloween, the older stuff was mostly what came up. Although I might also point out that I did not find anything with Johnny Carson himself relating to Halloween. And I looked for anything that I could, not just like an episode he did for Halloween, but anytime throughout the year. Did he interview somebody who was in a horror movie? And I thought for sure he might have had Jack Nicholson or Stanley Kubrick from The Shining to promote that in 1980. But then I remembered that movie actually was a flop when it came out, and nobody liked it. The critics didn't like it, and the audiences didn't see it. It wasn't until later in the decade that it became sort of a cult favorite, and now it's like considered a full-on classic, but back then it was not. So he may not have even interviewed anybody on that movie. I thought for sure Carson might have interviewed Michael Keaton or Tim Burton or Jack Nicholson about Batman, but I couldn't find anybody who appeared on Johnny's show with Johnny. Which really brings me to my second point, which is something that I've known about for a while, and that I'll probably do a video about someday. Maybe not exactly in the same way, but it is interesting to note that Johnny Carson had his own style of guests that he would book. Not only did he try to book the A-list stars, and sometimes he had slots open to book sort of everyman characters, like somebody who won a hog calling contest in Ohio somewhere. But when it came to musical acts, he booked a lot of classic musicians and probably top 40 modern people. I'm not saying he didn't have anybody modern or anybody young, but even the ones he did were of a certain style. So for example, talking about music, I don't think Johnny Carson liked rap or understood it, and I don't think he booked any rap acts on his show, so they all got to go to the Arsenio show, which helped fuel Arsenio's success. Carson also didn't like hard rock or heavy metal, so you might see those kind of acts show up when Jay Leno was guest hosting for Johnny on The Tonight Show. And this may be the reason why Johnny Carson was considered by some to be sort of out of favor at the network the last couple of years he was hosting The Tonight Show. Because while he still had his solid fan base, they were eventually going to go away. And in the meantime, all of his competitors were making a lot of headway by booking all the acts that were just a little too extreme or a little too modern for Johnny's tastes. And that was one of the reasons why the network was ready to replace Johnny with Jay Leno or David Letterman, both of whom were considered more hip than Johnny was. I think where Johnny stayed most relevant was probably with movie stars that were new and young, and also stand-up comedians, because there was always new and fresh ones coming up, and he seemed to be pretty good about giving chances to stand-up comics. This all came to my attention again during this video, when I was looking for acts like Pee-wee or Elvira, sort of oddball characters. Johnny didn't tend to book the oddball acts. The oddball acts were booked by Joan Rivers when she was guest hosting for Johnny, or when she left to do her own show, or later they were booked by Jay Leno or David Letterman, who followed Johnny. And these would be some of the characters that you would see on Arsenio or the Tom Green Show. I think he came later. But any other shows that weren't Johnny would kind of pick up the strays, and that's the sort of characters that you want when you're going to do a Halloween retrospective. On the other hand, Johnny might have done more Halloween and he might have booked more oddball acts than I really am giving him credit for, but I just couldn't find anything to that effect on YouTube during the last few weeks when I was working on this project. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.